internet program that highlights great things about living on Long Island and also shines a spotlight on issues that need to be discussed to ensure Long Island's vitality. Our guest this afternoon is a fellow who's very familiar with issues that need to be discussed on Long Island. He's the editor of the Long Island Business News. He's Joe Dowd. Joe, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Michael.
And Joe, each week, Ask Mr. Long Island, we interview people who either run organizations or, in your case, a publication that really is key to Long Island's vitality. You know, holding people's feet to the fire and making sure that what needs to get done gets done. But before we get started, we talk about pizza. And the reason for that is, as diverse as Long Island is, the one thing every town on Long Island has in common is a pizza place. And the second thing is every Long Islander will drive past 5 of those pizza places to get to a really good pizza place. So we're compiling a really kick-ass roster of great pizza on Long Island. Where's your favorite pizza place?
It takes a little bit of a story,
okay?
And, you know, journalists always tell stories.
That's what we do.
When I was a kid, there was a bar called the Amber Inn, and it was in Plainview where I grew up. And my dad used to come home some Friday nights on payday and say, let's get pizzas. Pies, he'd call them. And he'd go to the Amber Inn, and I think he'd get a couple of beers. And they had the best pizza. Place went out of business. So he would drive to Syosset on him as we got older to a place called Cristiano's.
Okay.
Very famous place that's gone over a number of business transitions over the years. And that was my favorite pie. Recently, they closed down for those renovations, so I go to Mario's in Oyster Bay.
Mario's in Oyster Bay. Okay, we've had a couple of Mario's that have locations around the island.
There's one in Plainview as
Plainview,
well.
Seaford, Comac.
Yep.
So that's great. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. It's fun, and it really, I think pizza is something very unique to Long Island, though you have it all around the world. The best pizzas on Long Island. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been in Rome, too, so
well,
I can state Long Island's got great pizza.
That's pretty cool. I've been to Ireland. They don't have pizza there.
No.
You're the new editor of Long Island Business News. You joined there a couple of weeks ago, I believe, correct?
It's about 8 or 9 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you see the Long Island Business News, the role it plays in the business community. Why should somebody read it on a regular basis? Walk us through a little bit about the Business News itself.
The Business News has been around for a while. And while its circulation is not gigantic, its influence is vast.
So you have the right people reading the publication.
Very important people read this. The movers and shakers, of which we actually have a name, movers and shakers, for one of our pages. They all read us. Decision makers read us, and we hope many more people, especially young entrepreneurs, the people celebrated in our 40 and 40 under 40 program. We want them to read it because it's almost as if it's a ongoing journal of business news in Long Island as Long Island's business changes to outside forces. The economic forces that we are facing now are somewhat unique to a suburban area like Suffolk and Nassau counties. So I think it's vital for them to see what's going on in finance, see what's going on in law, find out what's happening with the economy, even life in general.
Well, you say the challenges are unique. Walk us through a little bit about that. What do you mean?
Well, Long Island was a farm, a giant 118-mile-long, beautiful flatland.
My mother-in-law grew up on a farm in New Hyde Park. All right?
It's not that long ago that I remember my father taking me to farm fields in Melville to show me what a potato looked like growing in a field. And we got out in the car and we actually saw potatoes. And I know he did this because he knew it would disappear.
Right.
Fast forward 40 years, and it's not, that place is an industrial park. The golf course nearby has been mowed into something else. And all during that time, great industries, the aviation industry in particular, made incredible strides. We always think of NASA, men of our generation, and NASA, and at Bethpage and Grumman, and the incredible science that was done there, the engineering that was done there, and what an employment machine. Somewhere growing out of a farm field. Well, when Grumman is gone, and also Republic is gone, the great innovations they made here in World War II with fighter planes, et cetera. There are many examples. what's left behind is now some other kind of economy. And we know that the vast majority of it is driven by small businesses under about 200 employees, but most of them way lower than that.
Right.
How does that small economy survive if it's just another small business economy trying to support each other? It's like passing a dollar around the circle. In the end, there's still only $1 generated. Small business is an essential part of Long Island and its future. And they need help. They have trouble getting loans.
Right.
They have trouble attracting and keeping quality employees. And they also have trouble paying taxes here and living with some of the other problems that are associated with Long Island, higher taxes and also higher rentals and higher home costs, et cetera. But we also have Jones Beach.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that small business is an incredible economic engine, and we try to cover small business like nobody else can. Our idea is to make sure that that paper is read by everybody who is moving, shaking, designing, looking at the future.
And you touched on something I really want to follow up on, because I really think it's key to the future of Long Island. And before I do, though, I always want to say, one of my ideas for a commercial for Long Island Business News would be to film somebody reading it. It is a must-read, and for full disclosure, I appear there every other week in the op-ed section. But if you were to film an executive turning the page, tearing the page out, putting a note, and forwarding it over to an executive, it's you need to. You just feel better about being having your finger on the pulse of what's going on, because as much as Long Island is the world's largest small town, and you can network and you talk to people, we're also a $130 billion a year economy, and there's a lot of moving parts here, literally and figuratively. Let's get back to the entrepreneurialism, though, because about a year ago I was at a roundtable discussion at Stony Brook University, and they're trying to get at the forefront of entrepreneurialism. And Russell Lotz, the unknown co-founder of Computer Associates, made a great point. He said, entrepreneurialism isn't just about startups. It's a mindset that says, I'm going to really kick ass at what I do. And I think that the Long Island work ethic is really key to that. And I'll use you as an example. You don't own the Business News, but you bring an entrepreneurial mindset to that. How can the Business News, or what kind of role, or what kind of support can they give to that man or woman who decides that I really want to do well? Because as you alluded to, you really have to make a nice living to really enjoy the Long Island experience.
It's a great question. It is our question. I fought my whole life working newspapers upstate, and I worked for great newspapers there and then Pennsylvania. But my whole goal, my whole life, was to get back here.
Okay.
And it was because of the pizza and because of the ocean, but mostly it was because it's my home. And that entrepreneurial spirit was missing from a lot of the places that I went. When I say that, I say it's a certain kind of drive, an ambition that we all have to make some kind of difference. We're also media savvy, much more than the rest of the world that I've seen, where we want to be in the news. And my readers and my sources want to be in the paper because they want to get their word out and drive business and the economy forward. I think that's why it's so important for them to, why we are such an attraction here. And I don't mean just LIBN, but I mean this area. That I have said this before, but I am bullish on Long Island's future. I don't think we're in trouble. I think we're going through a tough time, and I think we'll come out of it even better.
Well, it's the tough times, and the same thing, almost the same thing happened in '89, '90 when the defense, with the peace initiative and all that, and Grumman virtually disappeared, and everything changed. But we came out stronger because all the people who took their Grumman severance pays and they started their own little businesses. The concern is, back then it was like, oh my God, I'm on the list to go to Florida. Now with the latest downsizing, it was like, oh my God, I'm not on the list to go to Florida. I want to come back to you. Said something to me that's really key. Long Island has a tremendous amount of value. And somebody once said about Long Island, he says, I never heard anything bad about Long Island until I moved here. We're our own worst enemy. And sometimes you need people who are from here to go away for a couple of years and come back and say, you have no idea.
Yeah, I never needed more than 2 weeks, to miss the place. And I missed it without exaggeration, I missed it the entire time I was away, and I could not figure out how to get back here, and I tried. When I finally came, I came to Patch,
Okay.
where there was an incredible entrepreneurial spirit among
Right.
the reporters and advertising people. We went out and covered communities that never got any coverage for
Right.
anything.
Right.
And we covered the football teams, and we covered things that they just never saw in any paper. That's the kind of people we have here. And I think that's why we shouldn't be denigrating this place, because really you don't have to live outside of it too long to realize that you got a lot of assets here that you wouldn't have anyplace else.
Well, the fun thing, and I use Leviton and Cannon as an example. They're almost catty corner from each other over on Route 110. Everybody knows Cannon. Very few people know Leviton, and yet Leviton is an international multi-billion-dollar corporation that does very well. And there are a lot more Levitons on Long Island than there are Cannons. Not that they're multi-billion-dollar corporations, but they're companies that operate under the radar screen. And you have all these young people. The ones that have made the commitment to stay here are really smart, ready to work hard, looking for opportunities, but because they're not intimately familiar with the Levitons, the trick is for us to kind of educate them as to the opportunities that are available to them, which kind of leads me into the 40 under 40 thing that the Business News does. They walk us through a little bit about that program.
It's great. I was here at LIBN maybe 7 days when they held it this year.
Right.
So I got to see it kind of without, any preconceived notions.
Let me just start the 40 under 40. You celebrate 40 Long Islanders under the age of 40 who have made significant contributions even at such a tender young age.
That's right.
You've been doing it since 1998. You have an alumnus of 600 people, 600 plus, and that formed a bond. All the people who are 40 under 40 have that commonality and work together, and it's a tremendous reflection on the island. I just want to fill in a little background there.
I'm glad you did too, because it's. I know many of the alumnus from other jobs that I've worked, and the people who were there were really proud to be part of this thing.
Sure.
This is a special way of not only recognizing them, but paying tribute to the next generation that's coming up behind us, who is about to forge the future for the island. And at that event, you see a wide array of professionals, doctors who have been nominated, business leaders, even there was a fire chief there of one of the volunteer fire departments who had done something innovative. It is a remarkable thing.
And what I love about it is it not only does it put a spotlight on people who go above and beyond, the entrepreneurs, even though they don't necessarily own their own business, but it encourages the next wave of young people. And as you know, I run an association of young professionals, and I distribute the application. I says, even if you don't apply, read the application, because it gives you a blueprint of how to have a successful career. So if you can fill in all these blanks or use them as guidelines, by the time you're ready for your nomination, you'll have a successful career. So people who are trying to figure out, a blueprint for having a great career, they could go to that 40 under 40.
You said something I want to come back on.
Sure.
There's kind of concerns about brain drain. It's a catchphrase that we hear all the time on Long Island, that young people just can't afford it, and they're going to go to North Carolina or Florida, and you know what? They're going to miss the pizza. I think what's 40 and 40 shows is there's an awful lot of people who want to stay.
Right.
And if you're willing to put in the work and the fight, and also maybe that generation, as my generation should still do, is fight for affordable housing in certain places. We need these young people to be able to get a start. We don't want to send them away for 30 years until they can finally come back. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more openness to construction jobs and projects that will bring housing and infrastructure for not only our younger people, but for our aging population as well. They should not have to go to Florida.
Well, that was a point, funny you should bring it up. Last night was the Heartland Project town hearing of the zoning board. And I went and I said, look, I'm not a young professional. I said I was when this whole thing started. You know, you guys are taking forever. I didn't say that part. I just left it out there. But I said, you know, Long Island needs to send a signal because these young people really do want to stay here. You know, and they need a little bit of a support system because the challenges to anybody under 40 are unique. You know, the starter homes, the taxes, everyone knows the routine. But the ones who are making the commitment to stay here, they're like the Marines, you know, the few, the proud, and they're going to kick your ass once they're done. And I think if we start harnessing that power, and again, this is where the business news plays a great role in that, you start harnessing that power, all of a sudden you have an economic tool as a region. Say, hey, we got the best and the brightest working here because of Hofstra, because of Stony Brook, because of Brookhaven National Labs and Cold Spring, all these tremendous resources. And if the young people can start tapping into that, and then the government agencies and the associations start supporting them, you're building something. And as great as the risks are, you know, and I'm 35 years old, my friend tells me I'm a schmuck for staying here because he's bought a 3-bedroom house in Raleigh. But he doesn't mention that, you know, it's an hour from the ocean and the mosquitoes are the size of helicopters.
I think it's 2 hours, and I've been to Raleigh. It's a nice town for about 2 days.
Right.
No insult to North Carolina, but also let's not forget we have not mentioned our proximity to New York.
Right.
Which brings me to transportation. How important it is that Long Islanders recognize that transportation is the key to further growth and also further economic development. We see things happening on hubs. Ronkonkoma hub, I have a column about it in this week's paper, I guess it's out today, where we're still waiting for enough state and federal funds in order to fund projects that just shouldn't be on the local taxpayers. Right. And then that would allow the private development to do what it needs to do, and that is build this multifaceted little community around a great train station. Same thing is true in Wyandanch. Maybe it'll happen in Suffolk. I don't know. They're certainly trying. Hicksville's next.
Hicksville has so much potential.
It has the most incredible potential, perhaps, of any of them at all. And all they need is a change of heart at the top.
Which I honestly believe is coming because it's just too much at stake. You know, Hicksville has the express trains into Manhattan. You're a half a mile or 5 miles from an economic engine, the old Grumman property, right. And right off the LIE in northern state. Ronkonkoma, tremendous amount of potential. If they would just move the terminal to the north end, people would fly into Ronkonkoma and take the train to the city like they do in Baltimore going to Washington. And you're right, the proximity to New York City, proximity to the North Fork, which is absolutely beautiful, the Hamptons, which you have nothing to do with. What other part of the country has that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I haven't seen anything like it. And also, I think there's a certain kind of spirit that comes from being a New Yorker and a Long Islander, a Metro New Yorker. It's not something you find everywhere that I've been. We are fiercely loyal to this place. Some of us aren't cut out for it and they leave, but many of us want to stay. And I think that's why the Long Island businesses was so important to me, because I feel like I can get my hands on the pulse of an economic community and maybe hope to make a difference, to make sure their stories get told, to make sure that those stories that are being told provide the kind of business intelligence that people really need. And my paper has shelf life. You don't have to read it all in one day. There's a lot of information in there. You can put it on your shelf and refer to it a year later. Many people tell us they do that.
Yeah.
Just to see where it was and where situations were. They look it up and they go forward with that.
It's funny because I do that all the time. I'll go back, you know, every now and then you get a rainy day, you get a couple hours and you just get caught up. But it's almost fun to kind of revisit issues now that you see a little bit of time has passed. And you're right, it's a tremendous repository of information. You touched on something before I think is really important. It's the circulation's not Wall Street Journal, but it's the right people reading it. The decision makers, the professionals who influence the business owners. And the really interesting challenge to Long Island, you mentioned storytelling. You know, we're in a Hauppauge Industrial Park. There's a million stories. You just drive up and down the block. A Globecom around the corner. I mean, what a cool looking building. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yes, I went past it.
Unbelievable, right? And every little business, maybe not decidedly non-glamorous, but they make money because they have to. And they're really good at what they do because they have to be if you're going to do it on Long Island. And I'm really encouraged to hear you say that because there's so many stories. Probably your biggest frustration is how do I get to all of them as quickly
without
as
question,
possible.
without a question. But I have a staff that is willing to try to get at all of them. I have managed to rebuild the staff there with some great people. I have some great veterans who are teaching me
Right.
lots of stuff, and that's the way it should be. So between the veterans and the hard-charging newcomers, I think our future is bright. But you said, yes, the circulation is small. We're open to more circulation.
Oh no, I get that part.
And
right.
we want us to be for the movies, writing about movies and shakers of all kinds. That even means nonprofits.
Right.
Okay, I met a lot of nonprofit people just recently who have a story to tell. We want to tell that story, and we want to get more of the legal community, which is doing incredible things, involved in incredible changes in the way the legal system is responding to new laws. There's lots of people out there with stories to tell, and we want to tell them.
Now, Joe, you have a daily news blast that goes out via email. You have a great website, LIBN.com. Talk to us a little bit about the kind of information that's there, and where do you see the future for LIBN in terms of the electronic age?
I have to tell you, that's an open question in the sense that we have an idea where it's going to go, but this technology and this delivery system of news is so new that it has changed several times in the time I've been involved with it, which was at the dawn of when the internet started to compete with print newspapers.
Right.
Ours tries to do the best of both. What we try to do is we have a digital edition that opens like a newspaper,
Right.
okay, where people can read it online, but in a traditional format. We have a mix of live news every day.
Right.
We open up national and local regional stories by AP. We do have a paywall which is worth buying through. It's
Right.
worth paying for. We don't produce this. It costs money to produce this. And
There's value there, and one of the things
Yeah.
always, because I was, there at the beginning with the internet, and the only publication that insisted on a paywall from day one was the Wall Street Journal, and they said, you know what we generate has value, and they're the only ones to have figured that out, and God bless them. So there's value there, certainly worth it. I know of some people who don't subscribe, and I lose some respect for them because I have to explain to them what's going on, and it makes me wonder why, if you're involved in anything on Long Island, in the business community, the political community, you would have to read this paper if you're going to know what's going on.
Thank you. But we feel strongly that if they would just give us a shot,
Sure.
they'll want to subscribe. They'll see the value in it. Our paper is live like Monday through Friday. Okay.
Right.
Any breaking news, you can get it there first. Breaking in the sense of international, national, local business news you can get. But we also have a mix of stories that get put up from our weekly paper, as well as local stories that are breaking, that
Right.
we write.
Right.
And they're there as well, so you can get a feel through our 4 o'clock, 4:30 e-blast, which might also be changing. We might be changing the timing exactly.
Okay.
Might be moving it closer to 11:30, but in the morning.
Right.
And that will give you an idea what's going on. 8, 10 stories that you need to know if you're a business professional here.
Well, as a subscriber, I read it religiously, cover to cover, and I feel like I'm in tune with what's going on. And knowing as a subscriber to the Daily News Blast, I feel if anything happens, I'm going to be made aware of it. So you're doing a great job. What's the website?
WLIB.com.
LIBN.com.
LIBN.com.
And Joe, thank you so much. It's great having you here, talking a
Michael,
little bit
thank
more
you
about the business news.
very
You're
much.
doing a great job. It's a great read. Our guest today has been Joe Dowd, the new editor of the Long Island Business News. You've been watching Ask Mr. Long Island, and we thank you for your time and interest. See you next week.